Let's leave.
Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, where asphalt turns to dirt and dirt turns to wilderness, is a place of isolation and freedom. On the southern side of the Virgin Mountains is a paradise where indigenous people and settlers escape the summer heat of the surrounding Mojave Desert.
There's no need to hesitate. Let's make footprints in the sand. Let's make miracles. Come hold my hand. Let's find something new, me and you. Is the sky like the color of your eyes? Blue is your heart.
The route to the ranch can be an adventure in itself. The pavement turns to dirt with a lot of potholes, making you question, is this going to be worth it when we get there? The Civilian Conservation Corps came to Whitney Pocket to establish a camp and build a cistern in a pair of natural water pockets, as well as build other improvement projects in the Gold Butte area around 1930. The cistern they built is still in place. It is an immense block and concrete structure complete with stairs to climb up and down on both sides. This watering stop between St. Thomas and Aravada Ranch was important to both travelers and horses in the days before motor vehicles. It has been said that the teams of horses knew to stop here even if the wagon driver had fallen asleep. They also walled off several alcoves for storage, with some of the walls still in place.
Walk with me. Let's leave the past behind. Walk with me. Down the road, there's sunshine and light. Say you'll go, don't make me wait. There's no need to hesitate. Let's make footprints in the sand. Let's make miracles. Come hold my hand. Let's find something new. Let's make footprints in the sand. Let's make miracles. Come hold my hand.
You made it. 2 more steps, so.
Yeah, you're almost there. There's a pipe down here coming out of the dam. Probably goes down there and fills up that water trough. This is probably where that pipe comes out to put water here in the trough to water horses.
Maybe this is where the horses knew they could find water. And even if the driver went to sleep for the
Yeah.
stage or the wagon, they knew to stop here and there'd be water in it for them. The drive up and over Whitney Pass sure led to some incredible views and wildflowers along the way.
Mother of one of them in her rocking chair over here. I got married on June 19, 1965 at the Mormon Temple.
Huh.
Wow. So this is the old family cemetery.
There are several types of lodging that can be found here. The first is Grandpa's cabin. This is the cabin that Luke Whitney and his family lived in when they bought the ranch in 1910. There's also teepees available and cabins as well as RV parking. The last type of lodging that is here at Aravada Springs are the miners' tents. In the Old West, miners would set up tents to live in as they moved from claim to claim while seeking their riches. There are 3 12 by 14 foot miners' tents available here. Our tent had 2 twin beds and a small table with 2 chairs inside.
So this is our miner's tent. We have 2 beds. We already hauled all our stuff in here. We actually got a swamp cooler, a couple windows for ventilation. Nice, I like it. There's some cabins too, but they've been recently painted and they smelled kind of like paint. I didn't like that very well.
In the heart of the camp is the Rock House, the original home of the Ney family, including Marilyn and Keith Ney and mother-in-law Maudie Whitmore.
Oh, this is the lodge. They have a pool table, fireplace, a TV.
To watch videos and movies.
They have a lot of videos over here. I wanted to play games. Looks like they have Battleship, fireplace. And out behind me here, you've got something upstairs up here. This is our happy place. If you want to take a bath, here in the lodge they actually have an old-fashioned bathtub.
There is an old apple orchard here that has been maintained. Newer apple orchards have also been planted. There are peach trees and apricot trees as well. There's also a very large fig tree.
A little orchard here with blossoms on it.
Probably peach.
Peach has more of a pink blossom.
There.
I think these are apple trees, but I'm not sure. Who's this hiding behind here?
Hi.
In this trailer they have it looks like three bathrooms. There's a toilet, a shower, and a sink, and it's got hot and cold water and soap and towels. Very nice.
The reasons for Aravada's popularity as a summer escape is clear. It features 9 freshwater springs, ponds, numerous trees, and fruit orchards. Its elevation of 4,200 feet provides relief from the stifling summer heat below in the desert.
I don't think I'm swimming.
Too cold?
It's cold.
Even have a water slide.
The ranch has many activities to enjoy, including the springs on the ranch, 2 of which feed a natural swimming pool complete with a curling slide and a swing rope. The ranch also has a place to play horseshoes, or you can play archery and other games that can be borrowed. At night, you can borrow a telescope to even look at the stars.
It's where the water comes in the pool. I just saw some frogs jumping in.
The ranch also has animals that include a steer and cows, a pig, a goat, horses, 2 adorable miniature long-haired ponies, an alpaca, and of course, the deer that naturally visit. We saw 5 deer. Oh, we did make friends with the black kitty as well.
My great-grandfather, my connection to the ranch is that my great-grandfather bought it in 1911. And I don't know if you know where St. Thomas is.
Yes, we've been there.
Okay, so my great-grandmother, great-grandfather lived in St. Thomas, but as she got older, the heat and the water there wasn't very good because it came out of the Muddy River, which is actually clear, but it's very alkaline. And it ran down an irrigation ditch through corrals and all those things, and then they dip it out of the irrigation canal, pour it in a cistern, and then the dirt would settle to the bottom and the other stuff would come to the top, and then they'd go skim that out, and then every 2 or 3 times they filled it, they'd dig out the cistern. Now it was the water they drank. So yeah, my grandmother didn't do very well with that. So this place came for sale in 1910. So my great-grandfather came up here with my great-grandmother, and my grandfather, who I knew, he died when I was about 24, 25. He was 10 at the time, and they came up here, decided to buy it, and bought it. And they named it Aravada because, and it's spelled funny, it's spelled A-R-A, and that's either because it's supposed to be Arizona, Nevada. That's either because my great-grandfather couldn't spell, or because he knew that someday I'd need a URL for my website. On Aravada would be easier to get than Aravada.com would be easier to get than Aravada.com. You know, it's hard to get. So anyway, they came up here and they built these terraces with a combination of dynamite, a slip scraper, which is like a wheelbarrow you pull behind horses. And you have 2 handles, and as you're going along, if you want to pick up dirt, you lift up the handles, it'll pick it up. When you got enough dirt picked up, you lower the handles, it slides along till you're ready to dump it, and then you lift them up again, and it dumps it out, and that's how they built. And then they had a box made of big, thick timbers that they would haul these rocks over to build these rock walls, to build these terraces. In fact, that fig tree right behind you was planted in the 1910s, 1915s or so. I've heard several stories. But anyway, so they planted an orchard up here, and this is known, you look on old-time maps, it's called Big Spring, and because there's an aquifer that comes down out of the mountain range, and it goes right down that side of the ranch. And because there's a drop off here, and there's granite here and sandstone here, the aquifer runs at that seam. And so, and then we have the pond over here because a little branch of the aquifer comes over to right there.
I've been swimming in there today.
Oh, have you? Oh, well.
It's cold.
Good for you. Yeah, 58 degrees year round. So anyway, so the reason we know it was spelled A-R-A is when they were remodeling that cabin up there, which is where my grandparents spent their wedding anniversary, their wedding night. Down under a can had fallen down on the floor, a peach can, and then you saw the label and you saw how it was spelled, and that's how we finally found out that it was spelled A-R-A. So they had fruit up here. And then the other thing they did is on one of these terraces, and I've heard all three or all four, they would set up tents, and the women from St. Thomas, the women and children, would come up here for the summer. My grandmother called this a pregnant woman's paradise, because being down in St. Thomas, because you're 1,000 feet lower than Mesquite. So anyway, so, and then they'd sell them fruit, berries, milk, cheese, butter, cheese, and that was one way they made a living. And then they canned peaches and other fruits, and sold them out here, like the Gold Butte mine and other miners they found. And what they would do is they had, here's the lid, and so they'd put the peaches in, and then they had a round soldering iron that was round and cupped like that, and it would solder the edge to seal it. And then right there, you can see, right next to that hole, you can see a hole where that's been soldered. So there was a little dab of solder next to that hole, and as soon as steam would start coming out of the hole, then they'd pull it out and take this high-tech soldering iron out of the fire and seal the hole and then throw it in the pond. Otherwise, the fruit would go bad. And then they send off to San Francisco for these labels, and they made flour paste and put them on, and then they'd take them down to the miners and sell them. Every year we came here because I grew up right on the Utah-Idaho border. And my mother, when my dad asked him to marry her, only asked one condition, and that was he would take her back to Hurricane once a year to see her mother. And so they did that. And so then when I was born, I was the 8th of 10 children, was late 1950s. And one of the sisters, who was kind of the boss, decided we were going to start coming out. Well, we came out here one year, and everybody liked it so much that from then on we came out every year. And sometimes we'd stay up here if it was temperatures right, and if it was too cold, we'd stay down at Whitney Pockets, because my grandfather and great-grandfather built it. Now there's a big, huge dam that the WPA built. That never held the water, but if you go up the stairs, down the stairs, and go up, there's smaller pockets that held water.
On the right-hand side of the road going out, where the dam is, and the stairs, because we went up the stairs today, and then down the stairs on the other side, and then went up the canyon a little further to where there was another smaller dam.
And that was built by my grandfather, my great-grandfather. If you're looking at that smaller dam, and you're looking at, I can't remember, it was the lower one, and put a little water on it, you'll see Luke Whitney and George Fenton Whitney. George Luke was my great-grandfather. George Fenton was my grandfather. And they built that, and I don't know if you know this, but that's a pretty steep climb from there up here. So they would always stop, water their horses, feed them, rest them, and then come up the mountain here. And they always drove at night because it's too hot in the desert. And so anyway, and then when they built the Hoover Dam, St. Thomas got covered.
Right.
But I've heard several stories as to why this is true, but my grandfather had just a terrible, worthless farm. My dad used to say you couldn't raise a fight with a quarrelsome wife on that farm. And so he had this 15 acres, a couple miles out of town, and then he had an acre of sand that was just a blowy sand, but it was right next to where the railroads, the train station was supposed to have been built. It was never built. But so the valuation started next to the train station. So he got more money for that acre of blowy sand than for the 15 acres he had out there. And the thing that I've heard that I hear the most often is they valued the land in 1927-28 when land values were at high value, but they got paid off in 1932 or 33 and so they had an old Model T car. My mother remembers that she was 10. She remembered it like it was yesterday when she was 90. He was able to buy a brand new car. He bought a 40-acre farm up in Hurricane, which was a very good farm. Bought a house in town because my grandmother was tired of living out in nowhere, and had the first indoor bathroom put in Hurricane.
Little Finland, also known as Devil's Fire or Hobgoblin's Playground, is one of the most striking features or attractions within the monument. There are few places like this on Earth that inspire the soul like the fiery landscapes of Little Finland. It is a gnarly, wind-swept formation of ochre rocks with strange and fascinating shapes. These incredibly chiseled shapes are reminiscent of fish fins, hence the name Little Finland.
I see you're following me.
Yeah.
against this cliff, there's a palm tree growing. Must be pretty wet right here. Looks like the water's leaching out of the wall over here and leaving a salty residue. I find it interesting how there's just so many palm trees all along the edge of this cliff, as far as you can see. Palm trees. Yep.
Devil's Throat is a 110-foot sinkhole in the middle of the desert, and it earns its name. The area attraction is a massive hole in the ground in the middle of nowhere. It is well hidden amidst the sagebrush and yucca. It formed naturally after the collapse of a ceiling of an underground cave. Fencing around it protects you from falling in this massive hole. After dinner one night, we saw 9 teal rotors fly over our miner's tent. They were too far to photograph by the time I got my camera out, but here's what they look like. We guess they flew out of Nellis Air Force Base.
Walk with me. Let's leave the past behind. Walk with me. There's something else we need to find. Say you'll go, don't make me wait. There's no